There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Microbizer.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon. Today, we're going to follow up on the story of Madeline Kingsbury, a missing mother from Winona, Minnesota, who's been missing now for going on 14 days. You know, I have had people from the community reach out to me, and I know the community is a little bit turned upside down with this case. They're upset about all the police procedure, all the police searches, the helicopters in the air, planes, ground searches, all of this thing. Just be advised, folks, that the police are following a protocol, an investigative protocol, and they definitely have a target to this investigation. And they're doing all the right things. And it's, of course, it's upsetting to the community. The community knows the people involved here. Madeline Kingsbury, of course, a prominent family in the community, a 26-year-old woman with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So yes, it's upsetting to the community, especially when it's going on 14 days, when unfortunately the likelihood of a happy ending to this diminishes the longer it goes on. Now, I also know that, the police are talking about, they didn't name a person of interest. They didn't name a suspect, but we know that there is someone that they're looking at right now. In fact, you'd have to be dense not to think that they're looking at the person who was last with her, who was, of course, they're saying it's the baby's father, and his name happens to be Adam Fravel. And from information we have, and not confirmed by the police, because the police aren't putting anything out there right now, is that they conducted 2 search warrants on Adam Fravel's parents' home, the home which apparently he's living at right now, the home of Richard and Ann Fravel. So you don't do search warrants on homes of relations to someone that's not, and I hate that term, person of interest, potentially a suspect. The other thing is that there's a lot of suspicion here, of course, because who was the last person to see Madeline alive? And the answer is Adam Fravel. So who do you think the police are focusing on? To think they would be focusing on anyone else would be lunacy. So they're doing what, and believe me, the police have more information and more evidence than we know about and the public knows about. So they're doing their due diligence, and they're trying to look. The goal is to recover Madeline Kingsbury alive and safe. But as I said, as the days go by and time keeps ticking on, the likelihood of a happy ending to this diminishes greatly. You know, with me today to talk about this missing person case, I have 2 NYPD heroes. One, retired NYPD detective and straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing today, Phil? I'm doing pretty good, Billy. How you doing?
Pretty good. And also with us today is retired NYPD sergeant, professor, and attorney, Mike Geary. And we discussed before, the reason we're all able to do a show at 2:00 in the afternoon is because we have no life.
Hey, watch that.
We're just joking about that. But, you know, Phil, I want you to comment a bit on police procedure and why Adam Fravel has been targeted, because of what I understand, the community is upset about this.
You know, Billy, the last show that I did with you regarding Madeline Kingsbury, we talked about how naturally who is going to be the reporter that reports the person missing, the last person that's seen that person before they went missing. Obviously, you're going to look for a partner, a loved one, a husband. So that's why the focus would be on him. And again, right from the start, my approach would be
help us with this investigation. As much as you cooperate, we could either eliminate you from being involved or a suspect or a person of interest, whatever you want to call it. Or, if you don't, then suspicion is going to fall right at your feet, obviously. Now, one of the things that we called for in the last show that I did with you, Bill, was we said search warrants of the home, the vehicle, and now they've gone and they've done a search warrant at the location where Adam is living at his parents' home. So again, I think that the all indications are, from what we know, is that it's pointing in that direction. Now, the police are being very, very tight-lipped about this, which I agree with 100%. Keep everything very close to the vest. That's always been my way of doing this type of investigation. And again, Bill, you've made the point many, many times that the press and the media can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. Right now, what the press's position and job should be, in this case, is to plaster the area with the picture of this missing young woman, pictures of that vehicle since she was last seen in that vehicle. And we think that the vehicle is going to be key since it was taken in by the police, I guess, for examination. And we'll talk about that later on.
Professor Mike, one of the important things is, and to us, this is very powerful evidence. He lawyered up. Adam Fravel lawyered up. Talk about that, Mike.
Yeah, Billy, he's got some good reasons to lawyer up. But as you, Phil, and I know from, you do these missing persons investigations, you're going to start off at ground zero, as Phil said, the person who was last seen with the person alive. So that would be him. So right off the bat, he's got to be the center in the very beginning. That's where ground zero is for the investigation. Depending on how fast he lawyered up, was he cooperative in the first 24, 48 hours? Or did he lawyer up immediately? If he lawyered up immediately, that's his right to lawyer up immediately, absolutely. But it would raise my suspicion as an investigator. Why would he lawyer up so quickly? He has some other issues going on with the family in terms of the custody of the children. So maybe he already had a lawyer. And so that the fact that he already had a lawyer on a civil side, fighting over custody of the children, maybe he called that lawyer immediately. We're not sure, but lawyering up usually especially in the very, very beginning, when you're talking to someone who you expect to be the most, the saddest, the most troubled, the person who would really want to help more than anyone else, is troubling in this case.
Mike, I want to just quickly go over the timeline. On March 31st at 8 a.m., Madeline and her partner, that's who they were referring to Adam Fravel as at that point, as her partner, who has two kids in common with her. So they have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. In certain states, certain places, we would call that a common law husband, because you have child in common. In the eyes of family court, you're family. So it's not, it's not a partner. It would be a common law husband in most states in this country. Madeline and her partner dropped their 5-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son at daycare. The biggest questions I had with that is who saw her? Who saw her at daycare? Because if that's the last time she was seen, she's with Adam. So I have a question with that. Who saw her? 8:15, the dark blue 2014 Chrysler Town & Country minivan Madeline drives returns to her residence. Madeline doesn't show up for work at Mayo Clinic, something Chief Williams says is very unlike her. So I would also like to know, did anyone see her get out of the car, dropped off in front of her residence? Because look, everyone these days, even in the most remote locations, has Ring cameras, has cameras in front of the house. Was that caught on video? Or did she ever get out of that car? So if she never got out of that car, guess who's suspect numero uno?
Right. Who's the source of the information to say that they traveled together? As you said, when they went to the daycare, did she actually get out of the car, or did he get out of the car and bring the kids in and tell people, my wife is in the car, how you doing? That sort of thing. I'll be back in a few hours. Is this the first time that he actually brought the kids to daycare, or did she usually do it, 99% of the time, and suddenly he's there. Why would he suddenly be there on that day? And quite a coincidence that she would actually disappear on that day. So, you know, as you say, who's the source of the information? Is it he or is it someone else? And is there a Ring camera that can actually, maybe in the neighbors or something like that, that could actually kind of verify? Also, daycare, if they drive in, is there a video, you know, a little monitor outside to see who's coming into the parking lot, who's leaving, you know? All of that stuff, I'm sure the police have that information by now, but it is troubling that suddenly within a really brief period of time, she, we think, is alive, drops her children off and disappears. And I would like to see what that house looked like. If a woman someone comes to that house and tries to kidnap her out of the house to kill her, that's her home. She's going to be fighting like a wildcat and she's going to be resisting. She's got 2 children in daycare. Or was that house actually in pristine condition? Is there a sign of a break-in in that house to say maybe there was a home invasion and she happened to be there, the burglars didn't know it, and they had to kill her? You know, all these sorts of things the police are looking at, and the public should be aware that the police have to cover numerous angles on this case.
Mike, very good points. Excellent points, because you're thinking like a defense attorney, and that's excellent.
I'm sorry.
No, that is excellent, because if she was kidnapped by a stranger, there would be signs of a struggle in the house. Also, she left her wallet, her cell phone, her ID, everything in the house.
Nobody does.
Who would do that? Who would do that? And I know there's people in the chat sometimes says, I would do that. Well, you're a minority. 10 a.m. through 1:30 p.m.
Right.
Investigators believe a van similar to Madeline's was seen driving on County Road 12 and Highway 43 in Winona County, and then on Highway 43 in Eastern Fillmore County. The van was later found in the driveway of her residence. I missed something. At 10 a.m., Madeline's partner, who we know to be Adam Fravel, tells police he left the residence in her van. How convenient. And returned later in the day, and she was gone. Police say there is nothing to suggest she left on foot or in another vehicle. So a lot of coincidences there, a lot of things that need to be followed up, because right now, that's the information we're getting. We're not boots on the ground. We're not interviewing people. We don't have access to the case folder. We don't know what checks the police did. Phil, one of the most important pieces of evidence, of course, is that 2014 Chrysler van. You want to talk a little bit about that from a forensic point of view?
Absolutely, Billy. Obviously, now the vehicle has been taken into custody. They're going to do a deep dive into the computer systems within that vehicle. Now, we know from previous cases that there are specific things like it'll give the speed that the vehicle was traveling at a specific time, when the vehicle started, when it stopped, pauses in between, different things of that nature. And if there is a navigation system within that vehicle, that could also be very, very fruitful for this investigation, because it'll tell the exact location where the vehicle was driving. Again, one other thing I think, and I don't know if this has been done already, but it seems like it should have been done, is his cell phone. I want to know where his cell phone was traveling around the time that we think that she went missing. That's going to be super important. And again, in the last show, I talked about the forensics within the vehicle with regard to crime scene. They need to do a very deep dive into that vehicle to see if there's any blood stains, fibers, anything of that nature that would also be evidentiary with regard to if something obviously some harm came to this young lady. So again, I think that all of those things are probably being done. When you talked about the cameras that had picked up a vehicle that appears to be similar, if you could match up the information from within the vehicle with those video cameras, you might be able to come up with something that'll say that this is the actual vehicle. So again, sometimes there's plate readers on local cameras in the area. Perhaps it was captured on a plate reader. Then you would have exact information as the whereabouts of that vehicle during that
Well,
period
Phil,
of
he
time.
admitted to having the van. So,
Yes.
it's not a huge stretch that was him. They now need to identify that van specifically. What were you doing? I mean, look, I agree with you,
Billy. I agree with you. But
no, Phil, listen to me for a second. My perspective is, in a case like this, go hard at the person who's a suspect right away.
100%.
Don't wait because he's going to lawyer up, and then you're done. Get him in
Yeah.
some inconsistencies early, and I don't know. Maybe they did do that. Maybe
That's
they did.
That's exactly where I was going, Billy. I said from Jump Street, hard interview of him with very detailed facts. Let him tell me the whole story. I'm going to ask him some questions, and I'm going to tell him, I want you to be eliminated as a suspect in this case. Give me as much information and detail as possible. Now, what I was getting at with the vehicle is if he said he traveled in this direction, but yet the vehicle is spotted in another direction, obviously that's where you would concentrate your searches for this young lady. But also now you've impeached his interview. You've caught him in a lie. So I think that would be, time for interview number 2. You said you were over here, but yet we have the vehicle in another location. Why did you lie to us? And that would be the time to really go hard.
This is the first new information that we're getting in the last couple of
We're
days.
hearing from the family of Maddie Kingsbury, the Winona mother who's been missing now for 12 days. Also new tonight, information on the father of her children and a brewing custody battle. Lou Raguse joins us with more. Lou?
Well, Julie, Adam Fravel, who was Maddie's boyfriend, has an attorney who says the father of the children is cooperating. But child protection workers have taken their 2 kids from his care against his wishes.
So please help us find Madeline. The children need their mother.
Now 12 days into their living nightmare, the family of missing 26-year-old mother of 2, Maddie Kingsbury, is staying focused.
We're very determined to find her.
Maddie's sister Megan, speaking from the Winona area where Maddie made her home after graduating from college.
We don't want Madeline to become a statistic. We don't want to be wondering 5, 10, 20 years from now where she's at. We don't want her to remain a missing person.
More than 2,000 people searched for Maddie Friday and Saturday. Winona police say she was last seen Friday, March 31st with her boyfriend, Adam Fravel, dropping off their 2 kids at daycare in her minivan. Fravel told police they came home, he left in that van, and when he got home, Maddie was gone.
Obviously, he's missing the mother of his 2 children.
Fravel has hired an attorney who says he's been cooperative in the investigation.
Adam has been consistent with law enforcement from the first time he sat down with them that he didn't have anything to do with Maddie's disappearance. These are the mother of his 2 children. Obviously, he wants her home safe.
According to court documents, Fravel does not have custodial rights to the 2 children. And on April 4th, police and child protection workers removed the kids from Fravel's home, citing in part the possibility of exposure to.
Mike, a couple of things that I'm going to ask you specifically as this little report froze up. This doesn't seem like
Criminal activity in the
let me
children's
play
home.
it out.
Fravel is fighting the child protection case in court. His attorney reiterating that Fravel had nothing to do with Maddie's disappearance.
Law enforcement, I hope, is keeping an open mind in the investigation. And like I said, Adam has been cooperative with law enforcement and will continue to be so.
Adam Fravel even released a statement today, again saying that he had nothing to do with Maddie's disappearance. And in it, he also said that police asked him not to attend the press conference or help in the searches. But a BCA spokesperson this afternoon told me that she's not aware of anyone in law enforcement telling Fravel that. Julie?
All right. Thank you, Lou.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mike, some real new information here that relates to potentially motive.
Absolutely.
Also, we found out that this wasn't just a brand new case. There was a case that he had no custody rights to the children. I take it that was an ongoing thing. It just didn't happen after this event. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, he probably 99%, I'm sure pretty much 99%. He already had a lawyer working on this case with his common law wife, however you want to call his partner, domestic partner, because she probably was looking to not allow him unsupervised visits. She probably wanted some sort of supervised visits, maybe with a court or with her family members present. She was probably concerned with what's going on in his home because they weren't living together, and he was living, I believe, with his parents. Perhaps there was narcotics, that sort of thing, pornography or something like that she may have become aware of, that he may have been exposing the children to. So this is probably what I would suggest is motive. And we know as police officers, people hurt each other for a lot less than this. And maybe he's seeing her being successful, taking her, the children away from him, and he wants her out of the picture. I think it's motive, and it's really strong motive. And the police aren't obviously ignoring it. And I'm glad they took the kids, because it frustrates any of the goals that he would, if he is the killer, the one who kidnapped her and disposed of her. And I hate to be graphic, but this would take away all of any rewards he would have by having his children without her.
The old adage that Shakespeare, you doth protesteth too much. He's so protesting his innocence, but yet it's so, look, dude, if I drove my wife and my 2 kids to daycare and my wife turned up missing, the last thing I would do is lawyer up unless I was guilty,
Right.
And we
want to lead
use that term. Go ahead, Mike. We use that term lawyer up because we're using New York slang. It means to invoke counsel.
Right. You would be the first one leading the investigation. I want to be out there walking through the woods. I'd be there 24 hours a day. Where can my lady be? Where can the mother of my kids be? The idea that he would not want to take part, or he was told not to, I find that a little far-fetched. Perhaps his attorney told him, stay far away from what's going on. Keep your mouth shut. That's the only thing I could think of. Because if I was his attorney, I might tell him, keep your mouth shut. And, that believe me, you are suspect number 1. That's what I would tell his attorney. If I was him, that's what I would tell him if I was his attorney.
Anyone that believes different does not know anything about police procedure or about investigative procedure. Phil, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's clear that he's a suspect. And like Mike said, if him being the attorney, he'd tell him you're suspect number 1. And the police asked him not to show up at any of the press conferences or be part of the searches. And again, to me, this seems like, this is my opinion, that this wasn't a well thought out or a well planned. It seems kind of, spur of the moment type thing. Perhaps there was an argument, things went awry, because he's putting himself with her vehicle right around the time that she disappeared. So that to me is saying something that this was like a desperation move. Now, Billy, you showed pictures. This guy's a pilot. He's by that plane. Perhaps he took a flight in that period of time that he talks about. I think that that's probably one of the first things that they were looking into. And as we know, if you do take a flight with an airplane, there's logs on everything. So again, I would impeach his statement. That's what I'd be going for. So now, if he did take a flight, there's records of it. I'd want to know why didn't you tell us about this and things of that nature. So again, it's very clear where this case is going. I don't think that there's a lot of hope at this point, and I hate to even talk like this, that harm didn't come to this young lady. But the longer it goes on, the less evidence, if she is deceased, her body is recovered, perhaps there'll be some physical evidence that could be, tying whoever it was that did it to her. So I think that that's kind of be 100% in my mind at this point, that she's no longer with us. Unfortunately, I hate to talk about that, but I think it's just common sense at this point. No woman, like we stated, is going to leave her 2 children for this amount of time. This is 14 days. And again, leaving the keys, the wallet, the cell phone, all of that behind, her jacket that she was wearing on the day. So all indications are that foul play is involved in this case. So I think that I really commend the police in this case, because they seem to be doing a terrific investigation, and they're handling everything. The messaging is very good as well on this case.
Issuing a statement today on dealing with the disappearance of a daughter, sister, and a mother, saying in part they too will continue to search, not giving up hope. They're also expressing their gratitude for everyone who's offering their help and support.
And we are hearing for the first time tonight from the father of Madeline Kingsbury's children. Through a statement, Adam Fravel says he had nothing to do with Maddie's disappearance, saying in part, quote, during these last 12 days, I have cooperated with law enforcement at every turn, including sitting down for multiple interviews with Winona County law enforcement. He goes on to explain his absence during searches, adding, quote, law enforcement advised me on April 2nd that they would not recommend that I attend the press conferences or that I assist in the searches due to safety concerns. However,
So again, you doth protesteth too much, and I want to just point out that this has to be tough for the community. Again, both families, prominent families. From what I understand, I have some people that reached out to me. This is a very large Amish community, so the people in that community may not understand the helicopters and the police intrusion. The search warrants, the taking of the van, the fact that Child Protective Services would not allow Adam to have access to his children, which we're learning now there was probably a court order that didn't allow him access to his children prior to this event. That may also be, and Mike, we discussed it before, the motive for this event. You want to touch upon that?
Sure, Billy. People who, they always say, you always hurt the ones you love. Yeah, at one point they were trying to be a real family, but once that family starts to break up and there's allegations, and that's quite common, is that the parents who are breaking up sometimes use their children as pawns against the other one, making allegations. We don't know if they're true or not, but that is a very common thing to see in these sorts of very testy confrontations in court. Whether or not it's true or not, we don't know. But the fact is there was at least a temporary hold on his visitation for the children, and there is some sort of judicial concern that the welfare of the children may be compromised by them living with their father. So I don't think a judge is going to, issue that removal order until, there's some sort of satisfaction on their part that there are really some grounds, maybe not a lot, but some grounds to believe that their health and welfare may be endangered by living with their father. And we've all seen, you, Phil, and I have seen people hurt each other for a lot less than the entire loss of their family or their children. People hurt each other for a lot less than that. I think what Phil said is very germane to this case. This might not have been a very well thought out thing. He might have assaulted her in the home or in the van when they got back. We don't know. Even though he was missing for there's a couple of 3-hour window or something, you got to figure that's an hour and a half because you got to get back from the farthest point. I would see if there's any shovels that have been used recently in the garage, whether there's dirt in the back of the van that looks like maybe a body had been buried and a shovel had been quickly thrown. Did he buy tarp anytime recently? Duct tape recently? That sort of thing to judge the premeditation, because what Phil's talking about is right. Because once you see this sort of thing, then you have a better idea possibly where her body might be.
Mike, 100%. And all of these things has to be thought of. And thinking investigators think of every potential aspect, all the eventualities that could have happened. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. Go on our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. And if you want to support us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you see the folks in the green font, they're part of our YouTube family. We really appreciate our subscribers, our fans, our friends, and they're what makes Police Off the Cuff real crime stories. They make it all possible here. Some have asked also about the plane, and Phil covered that pretty well. But if the plane was used, and from what I understand, he doesn't own his own plane. Perhaps he's a pilot, he's a licensed pilot, but he rents planes to take him up. You'd have to have a record of A, renting it, and B, when a pilot takes off, he has to put a flight plan in and call it in to the air traffic controller. So that would be evidence. So it'd be pretty easy to ascertain if he went up on that day in his plane, because that's been mentioned before. That's been done before, actually, on a famous case in New York City from 1985, where a doctor actually killed his wife, threw in his private plane, flew over the Atlantic Ocean, and threw her out into the ocean. So that's been tried before. One of the things that people are very of course, upset about that live in this community is that the police intrusion, the investigative intrusion, and the fact that they know both these families, this case could be around for a long time. This could take a long time. They may never, ever find her. And that's, I know, horrific, but I have to mention that there's a possibility. Maya Malete from California, her husband's going on trial starting in May. They never found her. So there is a possibility. I hate to say it, but it's already been 14 days. And the longer these things go, the less likely there's going to be a happy ending. Phil?
You know, Billy, I just want to make a comment about the community that we're talking about, because in the early stages of this case, there was extensive searching. They had as many as 2,600 people volunteer. So this is a tight-knit community that wants to help to find this young woman. I know that they scaled back the searches at one point. Apparently, they've again instituted some searches. So that says a lot about this community. This is a young mother of two children, 26 years old, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. The people in this community care about this woman. So if there is some pushback about all of the police activity, I think that for the most part, the majority of the community stands behind law enforcement and stands behind this family. Unfortunately, at this time frame, we don't think that there's going to be a good outcome with regard to Madeline Kingsbury's safe well-being. And I think that the children, the 2-year-old and the 5-year-old, that's the utmost of importance at this point. And I think that the Child Protective Services in that area obviously didn't place the children with the father's family. Apparently, the mother's family, Madeline's family, has custody of those children at this point. So that's one of the things that the Child Protective Services, they're so important in these type of cases. They will be the advocate for the children. They will, try to put the safety and the well-being of the children first in this case. And I just think that it's a tremendous outpouring from the community. I'm very, very delighted to see that. When you see people step up and want to help, and they don't do things against law enforcement wishes, everybody works together. It's a really, really good sign. And we've had the pleasure of working with EquiSearch in the past, Billy, and that they're a great organization. So again, I think that the community is really showing who they are and what they're about. And everybody's hoping for a safe return for this young woman. But I think right now at this point, the priority has to be the safety of the children and the integrity of the investigation to try and find out what happened and who's responsible for the missing of Madeline Kingsbury.
One of the things we mentioned earlier is that Child Protective Services did take the children. I don't have any confirmed information that they gave the children to the wife's family. I mean, that would be the smart thing to do. But I think that if they did remove the children, they would have to bring that to a court hearing. A judge would have to determine that. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, he's going to be able to challenge the removal of the children. And his attorney's going to do that for him. There'll be at least one hearing in the judges in the courtroom to allow him to challenge the removal of the children, give him his day in court. Everybody's given their day in court, and through his attorney, he's going to argue that he is keep the family together. He's the natural person who would be in the best position to take care of those children, not Madeline's family. So the judge will ultimately decide whether or not to continue with the original order to remove and place them with the family, or to modify it in some way. Probably what the best he could hope for would be some sort of supervised visitation under the judge's order, maybe accompanied by some sort of social worker, which you'd see like something like that in the Bronx.
Mike, that's pretty sad, because not only are the children lost their mother, but now they're taken to Child Protective Services, and I'm sure they would rather be with her family. And if obviously no judge is going to give the kids to him if he's a suspect in the disappearance of his wife. And that's what that warrant said, that potential criminal activity.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know when that was written, but they're not going to turn the kids over to him. And if that was the motive for this, is that he was basically, I guess, I don't know, family court proceedings. And we know that there's some loud lightning out there.
I heard that.
Yeah, I thought something crashed. Anyway, we know that this whole thing has turned this community upside down, but we also know that potentially this could have been the motive for Madeline's disappearance. So the judge and everyone else has to keep that in mind, that this is a real reality here, that this instance, and supposedly the day that they brought the kids to the childcare was his last day that they were going to see each other. So again, we're getting that as rumors and nothing from the horse's mouth as far as from the police or the actual investigators.
I think that the court would be hard pressed not to follow the procedures that were in place prior to this incident, obviously. Now, if the custody of the children was the mother's custody, and if the family, that let's say her mother was involved or her sister, they were very involved with the family, I would think that the family court would say, okay, let's keep the continuity. She's missing, obviously. Let's keep the continuity of the children with the family court order that was done previously. So again, there would be a challenge, as Mike said, but I think, cooler heads would prevail and common sense would prevail, and they would keep the children either in the custody of Child Protective Services or the Madeline's family. So I think that that's one of the things that would be looked at. And what was the reason for her to have the children? And the other thing that I really puzzled about, he says that she allowed him to take the vehicle for those 3 hours that he was gone. If the family can attest to and state she never would have let him use that vehicle, I think he could actually be charged with unlawful use of a vehicle, unauthorized use. And maybe there is some other charges they could come up with. Let's get him in custody, as we've seen in other cases on a small charge. Let's get him in custody with the hopes that maybe there's going to be some heavier charges coming forward. But if he didn't have permission to use that vehicle in the past, why would he suddenly have permission on that day to use the vehicle? I think a good argument could be made for an unauthorized use of motor vehicle. I know it's a misdemeanor charge, but it's something.
Mary Michael, Sergeant Bill, Detective Phil, and Professor Geary, if he was denied custody, why was he at Maddie's house early in the morning helping take the kiddos to childcare? Did he force his way into the situation? Now, Mike, I was going to throw this on you, but we don't have the information that will definitively answer that. But if you want to give it a shot, go ahead.
Good question. That's why I was thinking earlier, we talked about, whose information, who was the source of the information that said she was there dropping him off the children? Was he dropping off the children and only he was seen on camera? Was this the first time he'd ever dropped those kids off by himself? Or had she done it, 99 out of 100 other times? So that's a really great question because, as Phil said, you'd like to try to figure out if it's really likely that she would never, ever give him use of that vehicle. What's he doing with the vehicle? Take him in, get him printed, photographed, sweat him a little bit, see what happens. Most likely he'll lawyer up. But that's a really good question because that really goes to a motive and the opportunity. And
that's the second thing that I would do, Mike, after interviewing him. The second thing that I would do would be right to that daycare and interview everybody around. What did you see? Do you have cameras? Who was present? That would be the second thing after the interview of the husband or the father of children, Adam Favell. Very good point, Mike.
That's right.
Mary Michael, your part B to your question. Thank you for the part B. Also, if she was scheduled to work at the Mayo Clinic, was she even there at all? Very good question. However, these days, and we know work could mean working remotely also. So she didn't check into work. Does she physically go to, I would imagine that type of job, you would have to be at the office at least a couple of days a week. But we don't know what her schedule was. Was it a day that she was to report to the office? Was it a day that she worked remotely? So all of these things are investigative checklists, questions, and answers you would have if you were an investigator on this case. And unfortunately, we don't have access to the case folder or the questions or the answers that the investigators have asked. So, we had the other night, Banfield had the mom on of Maddie. And I just want to play a little bit of this. And Banfield asked some sort of digging questions.
Maddie Kingsbury sent a very funny text to her sister. Sister thought it was hilarious. And then things weren't so funny because after she sent that text, nobody heard from Maddie. And no one picked her kids up at the daycare until someone else had to. And Maddie wasn't home at the end of the day. But Maddie's phone and her wallet and her ID and the jacket she was wearing when she dropped those kids off at the daycare, those were all inside the home. Police said Maddie did not disappear on her own. They said it is suspicious and it is involuntary. This happened 10 days ago in Winona, Minnesota. She's just 26 years old and she has two little kids aged 2 and 5. Last person to see her was the dad. The dad told police that he borrowed her dark minivan. And when he came back, she was gone. It is all a mystery and more than 20.
You know, Mike, this to me sounds tremendously premeditated because, first of all, he uses the van, so that gives him any forensic evidence you'd find in the van. He has an excuse for it. I was in the van. I was driving the van. You know, I used the van.
That's right.
The other thing is he could have did the dirty deed, and I hate to speak like this, but we have to face reality, and then premeditated, went back to the house and dropped off her wallet, her cell phone, and her jacket to make it look like he dropped her off and then took the van out. So all of those things is not genius criminality. It's something that someone that premeditatively did this could have thought of to cover his ass.
You know, Billy, I was thinking about that last text message that Madeline's sister said that she got, that it was a humorous text message. I'd like to find out what time it was and where, perhaps what cell phone tower I could have pinged off of, because it's possible.
It was like 8:15 in the morning, Mike, I believe. Yeah, that's what was reported. It was like 8:15 in the morning.
So she was probably still alive at that point, because I'm just wondering whether or not it's possible that the father of the children himself maybe had texted back pretending to be Maddie, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's why I always talk to my students about this sort of thing in a homicide investigation. Establishing timeline and places and times where people are at different parts of the scenario is really important. If he said he borrowed the van, what was his excuse? Where did he go? Did he go to the hardware store? Did he just take a drive in the country? You know, as Phil and you guys, that you'd pin him down on that. You know, you just took a van and just drove around. Where did you go? Did you go to a car wash? Did you go to the bank? Did you go to get a cup of coffee at Starbucks? Tell me the locations. Give me the receipts. I want to see the video of you making those little rounds and coming back. It's really strange that he would just want, you just borrow the car and not have a sort of destination involved. I'm sure the police have looked at that, but that sort of thing makes me kind of wonder. It's giving him, if there was a 3-hour window of opportunity, it gives him really about an hour and a half, because you got to come back. So where would he have gone? Did he buy anything like a shovel? Because that really limits you. If you've pre-planned this and maybe you've already dug a grave, and I hate to be graphic, and you would already have that done, but if you didn't, and this was sort of like Phil suggested, maybe not the most well thought out thing, maybe a more spontaneous kind of violent act, you're probably not going to be, you're driving around looking for a place, wasting time, and you might not have the ability or even thought about taking the body and digging a hole. You might have just found a location really remotely, just dumped her behind a tree, covered her up with some brush, and then got the hell out of there. So, there is probably, and the police are narrowing down the possible areas. And there's a lot of wildlife out there, unfortunately. There's a lot of wilderness out there. It's going to make it very difficult.
One of the other things that's important about his statement, he says that he, along with Madeline, dropped off the children at daycare. So again, going back to the daycare, was that one of the regularities that took place in the past? Did he ever do that before? If he never ever, but yet he puts himself there that day, again, he makes that statement. Again, even though it could be spontaneous, he knows he was there. So let me put myself dropping the children off. But if that's an unusual occurrence, that it never happened before or very, very few times, that's one of the things that, we're going to have to drill down on. And again, a lot of times daycares will have video cameras.
Mhm.
So I think that that might be very, very telling right there. If he drops the kids off and she's nowhere to be found, it doesn't look like she's in the vehicle, and he's never done that before. Very, very suspicious right there. That's another good point of the investigation that I think is very, very imperative to find out, get those facts, and then again go back to him. Why did you drop the children off on
Phil,
this
they
stag?
can't go back to him. He's
Well,
loyal.
not now. But
Yeah,
I'm talking about you would have found that out in the first day, though, Billy, and you could have went back to him right away before
Except
he lawyered up.
the most important thing is the van, and that takes a while doing the deep dive electronically into the GPS, and none of us here are experts on that. We would need an expert to explain to us how the computer in there will tell us where the car went, where he stopped. If he stopped at a location for 15 or 20 minutes, guess what? That's where we're going to do a deep dive and search there at that location. Mike, very good point you made before about could he have been just driving around for 3.5 hours? What were you doing?
Right.
Did you go anywhere? Why'd you take the damn van?
Right. Right. If you didn't have a place in mind specifically to go where you needed a van, what were you doing? It doesn't make any sense. Nobody really just wanders around in a van, just driving around in a big circle.
No, absolutely not.
And we talked about this before in the Brian Koberger case, is that sometimes a lot of this electronic information, you guys know about this much more than me. Sometimes it takes 30 days, maybe 60 days to get all the information. So what we're talking about is something that the police may not have actually gotten everything pinned down exactly just quite yet. It's going to take a while.
Mike, you're so right in this world of instant pleasure that people want, instant gratification. It doesn't happen instantly, and, we covered the Idaho murders of Ethan Chapin, Zaina Knodel, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves. And the press was doing everything, chasing their tail, that in 6 weeks, oh my God, they haven't solved this yet.
Cold case.
It's a cold case. It's a calling the FBI, calling the CIA. It's a cold case. So that's the press. We say it could be our best friend, worst enemy. That's an example of that. They need to be chilled, and they really do. You got to chill out the press. And look, I know everyone in this community, and including us, we don't live in a community. We're frustrated. We want information too. But the police are smart to keep the information close to the vest, not put everything out there, because putting everything out there helps the person that did this. It doesn't help the investigation, so that's why they're being Phil, want to take care of this here?
Joe Murray, attorney at law. So listen, guys, Joe Murray is one of the best criminal defense attorneys in the New York area. He's a retired member of the NYPD, a 15-year veteran of the police department. So he knows both sides of defense. Joe has been known to deliver that knockout punch in the past. Perhaps if you have some type of a legal situation, you might want Joe Murray in your corner. He does deliver that knockout blow. You could reach Joe by his website at jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702. You could email Joe at joe@jmurray-law.com. Joe is a big supporter of police off-the-cuff real crime stories. His telephone number is in my phone, and I think if you have a phone and you're in the New York area, you should place it in yours.
Absolutely. Mary Michael, thank you so much for the $9.99 super chat. Very much appreciated, folks. We appreciate all of our subscribers, our fans, even someone that just stops by for the day and checks out Police Off the Cuff, the podcast here. We appreciate all of you guys. We've covered so many of these cases that they're heartbreaking. Gabby Petito, for example, she would have never been found except for a family named Red, White, and Bethunes, who actually are content creators on YouTube. Their video resulted in finding Gabby Petito's body, So all you folks in Winona, Minnesota, please keep on helping the police. Keep on searching. Keep on checking your Ring cameras. Keep on checking your vehicle cameras if you have them. Check all of those things because the police, they've reached out. They could use your help. This is a huge geographic area that they need to search. And I know the community is hurting right now. A lot of you Amish folks, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate everyone that lives in that Minnesota community. We know it's split because a lot of you folks are friends with both families, the Kingsburys and the Fravels. And you don't want to believe this. Believe it, though. You have to believe it. Not everyone in this world is righteous. That's why there's police. There's people that may appear to be righteous, but do horrific things, do bad things. And apparently something bad happened here. It's been 14 days. No one goes missing for 14 days unless something untoward happened. And we hate to be the ones breaking the bad news, but something bad happened, And again, just keep helping the police, keep this investigation going. Mike, your final thoughts, Mike.
Yeah. I say this a lot, and don't tease me, but patience. Just patience is a virtue. This is going to take a long time, like the Koberger case in Idaho, just to get the cell phone data to allow detectives like Phil to go after this guy. It's going to take a month. So patience and little tidbits of information that the police can gather over the course of time. Patience is what is needed. You don't want to rush to judgment. You've got one crack at it. You got to do it right the first time. And you have to be careful because you always have to figure, what's it going to look like in court? You don't want to rush to judgment on this guy Fravel, but you also don't want to be blind to practical truths in life. But patience is needed for everyone.
Mike, I thought about something that you always say, and some of the things that potentially he did is called consciousness of guilt.
Right.
The premeditation, the
Garyism.
Garyism. Yeah. The potential premeditation that he had thought this out before he acted,
Right.
And again, we all want to know, what do the police know that we don't know? And they know a lot that we don't know. And that's why you can, and I just direct your attention to the fact that he's their target. It tells a lot. Phil, final words.
My final thoughts, 2 points I'm going to make here. One, Billy, you brought up something very, very important we really didn't cover. Dash cams. Dash cams are great because if somebody was behind that vehicle, it'll show the license plate, or if they were facing it. Very, very important. Go through your dash cams, people. You're looking for a 2014 Town & Country Chrysler minivan, navy blue. Very, very important. Those dash cams are great. The other thing I wanted to point out is that we as investigators from the NYPD, we don't have access to the case folder. However, we do have the inside track because we know what investigators would be doing. All of the things that we pointed out about the initial interview. And then the next thing that I'd be doing is going to that daycare center, looking for video evidence, all the things we talked about. That's definitely the stuff that will be being done, that has already been done. Again, thoughts and prayers for the Madeline Kingsbury's family and those two children. Let's hope and pray that there is some type of miracle that could come forward and that she's still alive. If not, we want justice for this woman. We want justice for the family, and we want justice for those two little children. God bless them, and let's just keep everybody in our thoughts and prayers involved in this case.
Absolutely. Jeff B., thank you for the $2 super sticker. Best trio on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much.
We were almost a duo today, and then Phil called me. I said, "You want to come on at 2:00?" The dynamic.
How could I resist, Billy? How could I resist?
The dynamic trio instead of the duo. Folks, we're going to try to stay with this case as long as we possibly can. Some folks from the community have been reaching out to me, and a case like this, it breaks your heart. This woman, Madeline Kingsbury, had everything to live for. She was a real achiever. She was an achiever. She was going for a master's degree. She works for the Mayo Clinic as a researcher. She would have helped a lot of people's lives, in her life. And let's hope she's still alive. But 14 days missing is not a good sign. So, folks, have a great day. God bless. And we really pray for Madeline Kingsbury and her family. And we'll see you soon.
Stay safe, everyone.
Take care.
soul just ain't enough.